Today guys, we have a little bit of a treat especial. Gonna be putting this guy on my transmission. Now this may look familiar to some of you guys. This is a dump valve, very similar to the one that Hughes Performance uses. Went over, figured out what I needed for fittings and such, and I'm pretty much gonna rerun all of my transmission cooler lines due to the routing changing a bit with the dump valve. Basically, you don't use the top fitting or top cooler outlet from the transmission. So we'll get that all plumbed up. I also stopped at Summit on the way back from Gainesville yesterday near Atlanta. Picked up some new front runner. Those are at Bell Tire right now getting put on. For those of you who don't know what a dump valve does, basically fluid goes in here, out here. And what that does is basically starves the converter for fluid. The way someone explained it was pour a pitcher full of water, put it on your blender. You'll see how high the fluid goes up. Now pour some of that water out and turn the blender on. You'll see that there is less fluid movement in the blender. And basically what your torque converter is it's a pump. So when you starve it for fluid, you basically raise the stall speed of that torque converter, which helps with spooling the turbo or just increasing your stall speed, which it can be good going down the track. If there's a bump in the track or something like that, it can help with that. I took it upon myself to do a little bit of research and found that this was a good candidate for a dump valve. Let's stop and explain what I'm doing here. Went to Technofit to get some hose. This is the same PTFE hose that Gunner has chosen to use on his S10. The difference between the PTFE hose is there's this clear liner on the inside, and it's supposed to be a lot more resistant to chemicals and heat versus regular AN hose is just rubber with steel cords running through it. This does have a stainless braiding running around the outside of the PTFE, and then it has like this rubberized coating on the outside. You can get it just as stainless on the outside, and you can get it with black nylon on the outside. So the difference between these PTFE fittings and the regular AN fittings is there's a ferrule on these guys. Focus. That goes here. So in order of operations, when you go to assemble these hose ends, you're going to want to put this nut on the outside of your line, put this ferrule around your clear PTFE around there, and then you're going to thread your hose end with your ferrule onto your tube nut. You can't use regular AN fittings on this PTFE line. Don't try and do it. It won't seal right. There you go. There's the assembled hose end. These ones were steel just because that's what they had in stock. This will go to my cooler outlet from the transmission. Like I said earlier, that top line is capped off, and then this is a T now on the bottom. I just have caps on there temporarily so we're not making a mess. So that line I just crimped will go right here on this guy, and then this one will go back to the dump valve. One more thing I forgot to mention. Currently I don't log converter charge pressure. I've heard that too much converter charge pressure can cause issues, especially at higher RPM, which is one thing that the dump valve can help with if you open it at higher RPM, since, as I said before, the converter turns into a pump at certain speeds. Basically what it's doing is it's pushing itself against your thrust bearing in your engine. Obviously we've all heard that causes issues. You can prevent that by using a dump valve. You can do that by doing the Turbo 400s. You can put that little restrictor jet in the pump, so I do have that jet in there. So what I'm gonna do here is I purchased a female to male fitting with an 1/8 ORB port in it, and I have this 0 to 10 bar sensor, so about 150 pounds, and we're gonna put this in line with my cooler, log the converter charge pressure. Here we are, got the holes drilled. Put that through there, and with these bulkhead fittings it doesn't really matter if you put the long side or the short side protruding from the cover, so I'm just going to do the long side just in case there's moving parts on the inside, but there shouldn't be, because most people gut the governor out of the Turbo 400 when they're doing any kind of performance related application build. So I just got a little bracket made for, there goes my socket, for the dump valve to mount to. Basically it's going to sit where the tail housing mounts to my transmission cross member, and this will sit like that on the back side there. Just gotta drill some holes, and then we'll use a bolt to fasten it to there. I forgot to bring the dump valve with me to Technofit. These ports on here are -8 ORB, so I need a -8 ORB to a -6 AN or JIC fitting. So I'll stop during lunch tomorrow and grab those. And then I should have everything I need to put this thing all together. Here we are. I have my new PTFE lines screwed on there. They are not the prettiest thing in the world. Gonna zip tie them up to the frame rail to keep them away from the exhaust and the crossover there. I just got my little 2x2 angle iron piece made. Basically all I did there was cut a piece to length and then drill some holes and then slot them right along the edges with the angle grinder. I'm gonna crawl under there now and then mark my one hole here that I need to drill for my mount to go on the back. Here we are, next day. Made a nice little weather pack connector on there with some expandable split loom. Had to slot that hole a little bit because of where it sits on the cross member. My fitting that I bought wasn't quite going to work. Last night off camera did get it the dump valve all wired in and functioning. I did that with one of my relays on my relay panel back there, and then in the Dominator or the Holly software, all I did was for now is make it active when the trans brake is active. So I'm gonna get this finished up. I just have one more fitting to put on the hose, and then it should be functioning. Put the fluid back in it, check that the fluid level is correct, and fire it up, see how it works. Here we are, all tidied up. Got it all zip tied up there. You can see I had to make a tiny little line to go from the bottom of the dump valve into the governor cover. Front line here is from the cooler, so now it goes right back, not directly into the pan, but may as well be directly into the pan. Here's my power wire and the little harness that I made that comes from the relay panel. All I did for that was send a trigger wire for our 12 volts from the Holly. Here's my, there we go. Here's my pressure transducer, so we'll be able to monitor the converter charge pressure. Yeah, it's kind of a mess down here with fluid, at least, because I couldn't catch all of it. I have the bumper off here. I figured I'd go over my transmission coolers. I had this little black B&M cooler, which it's a nice bar and plate cooler. When we were at the track the first day out, I was seeing transmission temps that were pretty high, and then a few days after when I was street driving it, they were still pretty high. So I had this from a Super Duty. I believe it's like 99 to 07. Pulled this off. This happened to be a gas one. Flush it out real good. And now my transmission temps don't really get over 120. So these are just in series. It seems to work pretty well. Here we are, a little bit late to probably start filming this video, but here's my transmission on the bench. You can see what we did underneath the car there. Probably should have made this hose a little bit longer, but oh well, it fits, it doesn't leak. Got it all torn apart mainly for one reason. Here is the stock pot metal forward clutch hub out of a Turbo 400. As you can see, it's kind of a dull gray cast. So this is the weak point on the Turbo 400. Usually the first thing to go out shortly after is typically the forward drum, specifically the splines. These splines in here will strip out of the drum. So there's a company called CK Performance that will get you a billet shaft, and then basically they drill this out, bore it, and then re-spline it for their new input shaft. So I went ahead and ordered this billet. FTI makes this piece, billet clutch hub, and should be good for, I don't know, 900 horsepower now. I know I've told a few of you that have been following along, but I put this transmission together. I've never really done transmission stuff, taken one apart or anything, so I bought the book, the horsepower rebuilds or whatever it's called. I don't know, there it is. It's like 20 bucks on Amazon or Summit, Jags, wherever you want to pick it up. Followed that along with a couple other resources to figure out how to build this thing, and it's held up so far. So here you can kind of tell the difference when you tap these deals, the sound difference. See how much higher pitch it is when you tap on this one. I'm not really sure what that means, but I know with crankshafts at least, if it rings like a bell, that means it's a better crankshaft. So I'm gonna go ahead, put this guy in, double check the forward hub or drum clutch clearance. They say it should be about 10 thou per clutch. I believe I have 5 clutches in there. So it should be about 50 thou, and then go ahead and get this thing put back in. Here's a little bit more familiar look. Basically all I did was put that clutch hub in there, check the clearance, made sure the forward drum went all the way back into the direct drum. If you don't do that, pump won't go all the way in. So make sure you don't do that, or else you'll mess clutches up in the direct drum. After that, with these Ultra bells, they leak. I ran to Ace Hardware, got some new O-rings. They were 5/16 ID and 7/16 OD. Those go on the back side of this Ultra bell flange, and then put a bunch of silicone. I use this stuff. I got it from SRI, 315. We use a similar product on the funny car, 732. It's made by Dow. Both work okay. I prefer the 732. SRI just didn't have it. This bolt is a dummy bolt. This case only had 7 holes for the pump in the case, so that one doesn't have threads, so I just siliconed it in there. Anyways, cleaned both or all the surfaces off, put some silicone on there, put the bolts in, torqued them up, 18 foot-pounds on those guys, and now we're ready to put it back in the car. In the case that you didn't know, this is one out of a 4L80E. This one will fit directly in the Turbo 400. Fortunately, a lot of the parts of the 80E will fit in the Turbo 400. And this is a forged part. It's a lot better. You can probably get these at most transmission shops, or whatever it takes, or WIT, or Transgo, or Transtar, whoever. You should be able to get these, but you can hear this one. This one rings a lot better compared to the Turbo 400 one, which is just cast pot metal. Car's back on the ground now. I did get transmission back in it. Had one hiccup because I'm a moron. Left the converter on the shelf until I put it back up there. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Waiting on the silicone to dry, and then we will fire it up probably later tonight.